How do you know if a rental property is a good deal? In just minutes. Let's break down how I look at a deal. A lot of you look at price, cash flow, ROI, all those kinds of things. I look at something different. So the first thing I have a saying is the bigger the brochure, the worse the deal. If you really have to work at something, you really have to paper it up and it's big and heavy and thick, it's probably not a good deal. That's somebody's selling too hard something that should be simple. So all deals must be easily understood and handwritten on the back of a napkin with just a few numbers, really high level, where somebody can just say, yes, I'm super interested, tell me more. That's the first step. So how do you get there? Number one, all deals must have a story. If the deal doesn't have a story, we pass. Now keep in mind, this is before the numbers. I'll give you several examples. We just bought a property. It was 158 units on a golf course. It had been owned by the same owner who lived in Florida, never visited the building, and it had been untouched, unrenovated for 25 years. Now, for a lot of you, you see we're about ready to go. I was tried to go to the property twice and it was closed, which meant that he wasn't really managing the property very well. He was self-managing it from Florida. The manager, whoever they were, weren't doing a great job. The property was highly vacant, untouched, 25 years, incredible location. All I had to do was put a good management team in there and renovate some of the units to see how far I could push the rents. Now, does that story interest you? It probably interests you, even though I haven't talked about numbers. In this particular case, it was self-managed, owner-managed, poorly managed, where the occupancy was way below the market in an area that a lot of people wanted to be in. The rents were severely below market, thus the opportunity. I'll give you another example. Ross and I got an opportunity to look at an 8-building portfolio. It was about 1,200 units, all in one purchase. And I immediately saw in the rent roll that the current management and ownership was not charging back the utilities to the tenants. That's called RUBS, or Resident Utility Billing Services. So I calculated that the utility expenses on these 1,200 units that could be charged back over time, is going to take a couple years, was about $500,000 a year. So immediately, before I even drove down and stepped on one property, I saw the way the property was being run is that they weren't transferring the utilities back to the tenants, which we immediately implemented after we bought the 8 properties. And over a couple years, all the residents were now reimbursing us for utilities, which equated to a little over $500,000 a year. Another example is that Ross and I were targeting apartment buildings that had washer and dryer hookups in the units, but no washers and dryers. So think about it. The tenants would go down to the laundry rooms. They would pay $3 or $4 a load, and their monthly laundry bills were about $50 to $75 a month, depending on how much laundry they did. So I said, let's buy washer and dryer sets and put them in every single unit, which is exactly what we did for the 200 units that we bought. It was about a $150,000 investment. We gave every single tenant a washer and dryer, which made them very happy and also saved them a lot of money. And then when they renewed their lease, I said, I'm glad you like the washer and dryer. We're now going to charge you an extra $50 per month. They were more than happy to do that because they were already spending that in the laundry room. And now, for those of you who are great at math, that's $50 a month times 200. That's $10,000. That's $120,000 value add per year for a $150,000 investment. So it almost has a 1-year payback. So that's what I'm talking about with the story. So the second thing is that every property has to have what I call forced equity. Forced equity can come from renovating the units, which is a cost, and getting an extra $200 a month. It can come from adding washers and dryers and getting an extra $50 a month. It can come from increasing the occupancy. It can come from just taking the rents from below market to market. It can come from saving on the expenses. Maybe you can get a better deal with utility rates or insurance rates or labor or marketing or whatever it might be. There's all kinds of ways to force value, but the best way is through some type of capital injection. Another way, of course, is through passing back expenses to the tenants where the marketplace already does it. So passing back an expense for utilities to the tenant where the market already accepts that. On the 8-property portfolio, Ross and I were able to get another $500,000 in annual revenue over a couple-year period, which immediately falls to the bottom line. So for those of you who are great at math, adding $500,000 to a net operating income at a 5 cap is about a $10 million value add. Adding $120,000 a year in additional income from buying laundry is about a $2.4 million value add. So by spending $150,000 on washers and dryers, I get another $2.4 million in value. By finding the $500,000 in RUBS, resident utility billing services, and pushing it back from the tenants and them paying us and increasing our net operating income by $500,000, we get another $10 million in value. That's what we call forced value. So the first one is got to have a story. Second one is forced value. And the third thing is you actually look at the numbers. So forced equity is inside of your own control, something that you can do that the market is already accepting today, so the current ownership or management has not missed or has not done yet, that you are going to do and capitalize on that. Of course, the value will translate over to yourself or to your investors. So that's what forced value is. So every deal has to have a story, every deal has to have forced value, and that's where you start to take a look at how are these rents compared to market? Where is the market heading? Are there more units in the market or less units in the market? Is this where people want to be? And then you can start to formulate your income projections. The other thing is you can look at other income. What's other income? Other income is locations. Maybe upstairs on the corner has a better view than downstairs on the parking lot. You price the units accordingly. You can always squeeze out value inside of there. Another one could just be accommodating the residents. Maybe they have pets, so you charge a pet rent and a pet deposit. Typically, we found that most people that own pets are responsible renters just like anyone else. That could translate into quite a bit of money. But there's all kinds of things you can do on the other income side with regard to parking or storage units or yards or all kinds of things that will increase your income. And these are all the things that you could do inside of a rent roll that we find always is sitting there as low-hanging fruit. Also part of forced equity, but we don't look at that until there's a story itself first and there's some big forced equity play to be able to override all of this. Then, of course, we take a look at the expenses and we dig into all the things just like anyone else on insurance and property taxes and utilities and labor and marketing and all the things that it costs to run a property. In my experience, it's really, really hard to tighten up those expenses too much, but I've done it plenty of times, but we typically save that for the very last because it's the hardest thing to do. And then, of course, we get fixed rate debt and we make sure that it cash flows. So if it cash flows based on today's operations with today's rent roll and today's expenses and today's fixed rate, that all of the things I mentioned are just low-hanging fruit and extra gravy to be able to add to the cash flow for the investment itself and to grow not only the value, but the cash flow over time. And once we capitalize on all those things, we do what everyone wants to do, and that is we do a cash-out refi. We give the money back to the investors. If there's enough available, we keep the property for the long term, and we wait and do it again. And so the reason I can do this in minutes, because I've done this so many times, I've seen so many scenarios, not only have we done it and executed in the field on properties we bought, but I'm doing it every single day as I'm looking at deals and usually hitting the delete button. So the only way to look at deals like this in minutes is to practice, practice, practice.